Hey guys, how's it going? Dudey here. I am back with another video. I have to warn you off the bat, guys, what you're about to hear in this video is not nice, okay? It's some of the worst things I've ever heard humans do to other humans in my entire life, and I'm ashamed to say I had no idea that this existed. A lot of you guys in the comments recommended I check out Unit 731. That is the Japanese army in World War II. They were doing horrible, deplorable, harrowing human experiments that are nothing less than pure evil. I just want you guys to be aware that what you are going to hear is really bad, guys. Really bad, okay? We'll just jump into it now. These are 6 of the worst things that happened at Unit 731. So Unit 731 actually began as an innocent research and public health agency. However, it eventually grew into an assembly line for weaponized diseases that, if fully deployed, could have ended all life on Earth several times over. So what they were trying to achieve was weaponizing the plague, essentially, and trying to understand and discover the effects of chemicals, diseases, and weaponry. All of this progress was achieved by the unlimited suffering of the prisoners of war at the time from China and Russia, etc. One of the experiments at Unit 731 was frostbite testing. Yoshimuro Hisato was a physiologist who was assigned to Unit 731 and had a particular thing for hypothermia. He really wanted to understand what hypothermia was, how it works, the effects on the body, and essentially how to cure frostbite. However, in order to discover how is best to cure frostbite, if it is at all curable, he would take the prisoners of war, he would place their arms or their limbs into vats of freezing cold water, or take them outside in the winter and just leave them there until the limb was literally covered in a sheet of ice. According to eyewitness accounts, the limbs would actually resemble planks of wood when they were struck by a cane. But obviously, just getting to the frostbite or frozen stage was just the beginning. You then have to reverse it. Well, he had many different techniques for trying to reverse this, including holding the limb over an open fire, putting the limb into boiling hot water, or just leaving you there to wait and see how long the blood takes to naturally thaw out the limb. Another experiment that was going on at Unit 731 was vivisection on conscious patients. That means having an operation, open operation, while you are awake. This area of 731 was called Maruta, and it specified in giving people diseases like the bubonic plague, then cutting them open and observing what it does to your internal organs and stuff, because obviously normally when someone has bubonic plague, their organs aren't exposed and studied until it's an autopsy, i.e. they are dead. So these guys wanted to open people up while they're still alive to see what was going on as the disease took over. To begin with, they were actually volunteers from the army that were like, yeah, sure, I'll go into this program. I don't think Maruta were being honest with what these army people were signing up to, but when people cottoned on and all of the volunteers were dying, Maruta decided to get rid of the whole consent thing and just get in the Chinese prisoners of war and civilians. It's just beyond belief that this was even a thing. And also, don't get it mistaken, these people weren't just awake. There was no anesthetic. That's what vivisection is. Vivisection is mutilating a human body without anesthetic. That is what vivisection is. They were being tortured. They were being cut open, their organs exposed and studied while you are not even anesthetized. You're just there. You're taking it all in. You're probably in shock, but if you're not, if you're one of the unlucky ones that aren't in shock, you're taking in all the pain, you're taking in all these people fucking just observing your organs splayed out on the fucking table while the plague takes over your body. Unreal. Like, it just blows my mind. I can't get my head around humans doing this to other humans. War really does bring out the absolute worst, most diabolical areas within the human psyche. Some subjects, as they were called at Unit 731, had limbs amputated and sewed onto the other side. So they'd take your right arm, cut off your left arm and switch them over to either see if they could get them working again or see how long it takes for gangrene to set in. After all of that, you'd either be shot, lethal injection, or buried alive. None of the Chinese, Mongolian, Korean or Russian prisoners assigned to Unit 731 survived. None. Not one. Another experiment was weapon testing. Weapon testing at Unit 731. So this is literally how it sounds. So, you know, bullets, what sort of damage does it do? Knives, what sort of damage does it do? Bayonets, how effective is that? Flamethrowers, how effective are they? Grenades, what's the, you know, the shrapnel damage, yeah? But rather than using target dummies, live people were strapped to boards and shot, stabbed, blown up, flamethrowers, you name it, any weapon you can think of that was around in World War II, human bodies, live people were used to test the damage that they done. They also studied crush damage, i.e. heavy objects were just dropped onto people. People were locked up and deprived of food and water to see how long they could survive. Some people were only allowed to drink seawater, and some people were given transfusion of mixes of animal and human blood to see if the transfusions would work, and also to study how blood clots work. There was also prolonged X-ray exposure, which either killed or sterilized thousands of people, as well as inflicting horrible burns when the emitting plates were miscalibrated or held too close to the subject's nipples, genitals or face. They also tested G-force. They tested everything, but they were always on living people. It's fucking disgusting. They did a lot of syphilitic, i.e. syphilis experiments as well, because according to this, venereal disease has been the bane of organised military since ancient Egypt, and so it stands to reason that the Japanese military would take an interest in the symptoms and treatment of syphilis. To learn what they needed to know, doctors assigned to Unit 731 infected prisoners with the disease and withheld treatment to observe the uninterrupted course of the illness. A contemporary treatment, a primitive chemotherapy agent called salvarsan, was sometimes administered over a period of months to observe the side effects. However, to ensure effective transmission of disease, syphilitic male prisoners were ordered to rape both male and female fellow prisoners, who would then be monitored to observe the onset of the disease. If the first exposure failed to establish infection, more rapes would be arranged until it did. That's how people can fall so far to do these fucking evil things. I just can't wrap my fucking head around, you know? I might sound fucking ignorant and naive right now. I just can't understand, you know. Maybe that's a good thing that I can't understand how people can do this, and I'm doing this to preface what I'm about to say next, because what I'm about to say next is probably the worst of it all. What you're about to hear, if you want to, is it's probably one of the worst things I've ever heard in my entire life, and the fact that someone came up with this as a form of experimentation, what I'm going to do, if you don't want to hear this next bit, is you go to this timestamp here. Okay, I'm gonna read this from the article so that I get this right. Okay, so rape and forced pregnancy. Beyond just the syphilis experiments, rape became a common feature of Unit 731's experiments. For example, female prisoners of childbearing age were sometimes forcibly impregnated so that weapon and trauma experiments could be done on them. After being infected with various diseases, exposed to chemical weapons, or suffering crush injuries, bullet wounds and shrapnel injuries, the pregnant subjects were opened up and the effects on the fetuses studied. There's no words for that. There really isn't. And I feel so deeply fucking sorry for every victim of this Unit 731. I really do. And finally, I feel like this is what their big plan was. This was the whole point of Unit 731 in the end, right? So the totality of Unit 731's research was in support of their larger mission, which by 1939 was to develop horrific weapons of mass destruction for use against the Chinese population and presumably American and Soviet forces if the time ever came. To this end, Unit 731 cycled through tens of thousands of prisoners at several facilities across Manchuria, which had been occupied by Imperial forces for years. Inmates of these facilities were infected with several of the most lethal pathogens known to science. Yersinia pestis, which caused bubonic and pneumonic plague, and typhus, which the Japanese hoped would spread from person to person after being deployed and depopulate disputed areas. To breed the most lethal strains possible, doctors monitored patients for rapid onset of symptoms and quick progression. Prisoners who pulled through were shot, but those who got sick as fastest were bled to death on a mortuary table, and their blood was used to transfect other prisoners, the sickest of whom would themselves be bled to transfer the most virulent strain to yet another generation. I.e., the worst of the worst were bled to death so that could be given to more people to make it worse, so that could be given to more people to make it worse, so that could be given to more people to make it worse, until they had the most diabolical fucking disease ever created. Human beings did this. Human beings are capable of this. It is just... I'm almost losing my faith in humanity researching this video. One member of Unit 731 later recalled that very sick and unresisting prisoners would be laid out on a slab so a line could be inserted into their carotid artery, where most of the blood had been siphoned off and the heart was too weak to pump anymore. An officer in leather boots climbed onto the table and jumped on the victim's chest with enough force to crush the rib cage, whereupon another dollop of blood would spurt into the container. When the plague bacillus had been bred to what was felt to be a sufficient lethal caliber, the last generation of prisoners to be infected were exposed to huge numbers of fleas. The fleas were then packed into dust and sealed inside clay bomb casings. That was their plan. That was the big finale, yeah? To develop the worst plague imaginable and then weaponize it to destroy their enemies. That was Japan's final solution. Now obviously America went on to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which immediately put an end to Unit 731. However, a lot of the doctors there that were doing these experiments simply slipped away back into normal life in Japan, and a lot of them became university lecturers. There was no justice for these people. There was no justice served against the monsters that did this, and that is it's just terrible. And there is no happy end to this video, guys, unfortunately. That is Unit 731, one of the most horrific historical things that I had no idea about. And I feel like this should be more well known, to be honest. I feel like this should be taught in schools, because this is clearly inside human beings somewhere, and we need to learn. The information it's the same with Auschwitz. It needs to be taught, because we need to remember, because we need to make sure that these mistakes are never ever repeated. These things cannot happen again, and that is why education is so fucking important on these things. There was part of me that wasn't going to do this video today when I looked into it and what actually happened, but I thought, you know what, no. I think people need to know about this, because, you know, unfortunately life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, and sometimes it's fucking evil, and we need to be exposed to the evil. We need to know what evil is so that we don't become it ourselves or repeat it in any way or allow it to be repeated. So yeah, there we go, guys. That was today's video. Apologies, it was a dark one for sure, but I'll be back with another video very soon. I hope that you learnt something, because I don't think anyone could enjoy that. Thank you so much, guys. As always, links are down below. Like, share and subscribe. Sweet one, geese.